Is dat die aura nie sigbaar is nie, sodat niemand die bestaan daarvan kan bewys nie. Maar sê nou 'n mens kon dit fotografeer en dit kon vir jou dokter wys wat jy makeer. Doreen Morris het die saak gaan bekyk.
Our quest to find out more about the world around us has yielded enormous breakthroughs in technology in the past 200 years. The electron microscope, for example, has taken us into worlds we couldn't have imagined existed. Now there is something new on the market, a camera that is claimed to take a photograph of the human aura in much the same way as the Polaroid takes a happy snap. Called an aura spectrophotometer, the camera, one of only about 10 in the world, has been brought to South Africa by Barbara and her husband, Jeff Dengler. The idea is to use it in conjunction with their spiritual healing and simultaneously build up a bank of research material that may one day assist in diagnosing disease.
It actually works on a principle similar to a lie detector. When you have a lie detector test, it actually measures the electromagnetic responses of the skin in the hand. The camera works on a similar principle. We have a sensor that the person having the picture taken puts their hands on, both their hands, and then the vibrations, the energy impulses from the skin of the hands is then interpreted into the colors in the aura, and the camera has a mechanism that places these colors on the photograph.
How do we know that we're not being cheated by a machine?
Well, I'm lucky in that respect because I can see and sense auras. So if I were to see something coming in a photograph that wasn't in what I perceived in the person, then yes, I would perhaps pick up that anomaly, and then I would be very uncomfortable with using this camera.
Apparently, this man's aura shows his skepticism. I too was skeptical and wanted proof that what we were seeing was indeed the aura and not machine-generated colors. But how does one prove something that even science finds difficult to accept?
There are just so many different colors and shapes in the aura that, to us, it shows us something that couldn't possibly be contrived.
Photographing patients before they underwent their healing and then taking a second photo afterwards, they frequently found a distinct difference between the two images. We called in Mike, a recovering crack cocaine addict from Riverfield Lodge, to be our guinea pig. We wondered if his habit would show up on his aura and if the image taken after the healing would be different to the first.
I don't know what to expect, but I'm quite excited to see the outcome.
The aura of a healthy, well-balanced person apparently looks similar to this one. In it, all the colors of the rainbow are present. This was Mike's first picture taken before the spiritual healing, and this was his photograph taken afterwards.
As we send healing energy in, it's always very green. And you can see that the pink has actually started spreading through your aura. As you can see, there is still a little bit of a dent on the side of your aura, but it's not like a piece that's been cut out. It's actually evening out a little bit. So what the healing is doing is it's repairing the damage to your aura as well as helping your body to start healing itself.
And how do you feel after your healing session?
Well, I've been told I'm going to have a great day, so I'm going to have to make sure that it is.
Barbara also told Mike that he'd be making a few extra trips to the bathroom. He later reported that she'd been accurate on both accounts. But our search for the elusive aura and proof of its existence was not satisfied. We were looking for something more scientific, and to our surprise, we found it. Barbara and Jeff are not the only ones excited about photographing the aura. Here at Medunsa, the heart of conventional medicine, research into aura photography is ongoing. Photographer Hussein Ibrahim is head of the Department of Medical Illustration. Part of his research involves Kirlian photography, another method used to photograph the aura. Surprisingly, his unusual research is sanctioned by Medunsa. Are you convinced there is such a thing as an aura?
I'm absolutely convinced there is. I'm sure you must also have experiences yourself. People have commented they've gone into a room and suddenly the atmosphere changed. Or someone else walked into the room and a colleague may have said, Doreen, you know, the atmosphere changed. So-and-so walked in and the atmosphere suddenly changed. What is that?
Working towards the year 2000, Hussein has spent the last 18 years standardizing the many variables involved, hoping that one day an examination of the aura will assist medicine to diagnose disease. Once poo-pooed by the Royal Photographic Society, he was later bestowed with a British Medical Journal Award.
I'm hoping to bridge the gap between the so-called psychics, the mystics, and the scientific people on the other side.
Hussein, how could your research help the medical field?
I believe in many ways. When I started with my research in the UK, I used to photograph 12 members of staff in the morning and in the evening before going home. And I built up a bank of results on each individual. I could predict with extreme accuracy to my head of department at the time who was going to be at work the following day and who not. And there was nothing clever about it, because when you were in a healthy state, you find that the aura was absolutely complete. And without the person even realizing it, that he or she is not feeling well, you find, that the aura started breaking up. And as a person's recuperating, it will get back to normality.
Trying to prove the existence of the aura is very difficult, so we thought we'd try a little test of our own. Now, we've been told that drinking alcohol colors the aura a muddy red. On my left is Gregor. Now, we've already given him quite a few vodkas this morning, and he's sticking over really nicely. And this is Matthew, clean-living, non-smoking, creative student. Let's see what their photographs reveal. Hussein knew nothing of our devious experiment. Gregor was plied with breath fresheners to mask the smell of the alcohol and given strict instructions to act normally.
What we're going to do is we're going to photograph in the Kirlian machine. I have the photographic recording material on the plate already. Can you position your hand nicely? Okay, make sure that you don't touch any. I'm going to switch the machine on for predetermined time for exposure. Thank you.
Matthew then went through the same process, which is normally filmed in complete darkness, to avoid any extraneous light from getting onto the film.
The amperage is very low, yes.
We have repeated the process for the benefit of the camera. The photographs were then developed and 45 minutes later, ready to be examined. Now let's take a look at the photographs of our volunteers. What do they reveal?
Doreen, this is the first time, this is Gregor's image, this is the first time in my 18 years that I've seen an image like this, because it's very, very incomplete.
Are the colors significant in any way? There seem to be two distinct colors.
Yes, they are. For example, it's a pinky blue type of image, and then, of course, we have spots of red on there. It's been said, for example, that the normal, healthy, well-balanced person has an even blue aura around the subject itself, and in states of disease you find that it goes orangey red. But can I also say that, for example, people under the influence of alcohol, they all also emit an orangey red aura.
Now can we take a look at Matthew's picture?
Now Matthew's picture here, to me, looks what I've seen before. Lovely blue aura around it. It's a better image than the first one we saw.
Well, this is the moment of truth. We have an admission to make. We gave Gregor quite a few vodka shortly before you photographed him, and your interpretation was absolutely correct. This is the photograph of Matthew's aura. By comparison, Gregor's was just a splodgy mess. 2 hours later, he was sobering up and had another photograph taken. Hussein had not seen the results yet.
During 2 hours later, I predict that there is going to be an improved image in Gregor's result. You'll find that it will start resembling what we would call beginning to take the form of a normal pattern of an individual's aura.
And sure enough, Hussein's predictions were correct.
See what has happened now. On our left here, we have Matthew's image. You can see it's a more complete type of image now. He's obviously very happy with the technique of Kirlian photography and the current going through his body. And if you look at Gregor's one here, it's also becoming more complete in terms of the imagery that you see here.
Busy playing Gregor with alcohol here. Only doubles. It's offering no resistance.
Gregor didn't stay sober for long. We still had to perform the same experiment on the aura spectrophotometer. Matthew played the willing waiter and drank no alcohol himself.
Cheers.
Like was saying, Barbara and Jeff were completely unaware of the state of our participant. Gregor was quite drunk when he walked into Barbara's home, but his behavior was impeccable and they suspected nothing. We waited eagerly to hear Barbara's analysis.
The aura actually has a very interesting shape. It's very brown at the bottom, moving up through yellow, orange, and into red at the top here. Now, of course, Gregor, I'm talking to you like someone goes to the doctor and says, okay, doctor, you tell me what's wrong with me. But from what I can see here, I have to ask you a question. Have you been up to mischief today? Have you been doing something that you're feeling a little bit guilty about?
Maybe.
Because what I do see here is a lot of stress in your aura, but also a lot of logical thinking that you're probably extremely skeptical about what's happening here. But what does concern me is a very foggy, clouded, murky brown in your aura. Do you smoke? Do you use drugs? Or have you used alcohol today?
I smoke and...
Because I often find when a person uses a substance that's either consciousness altering or is perhaps you take substance into the body through the breath, it actually creates a very murky texture to the aura.
Actually, the truth that I have been drinking since 9 o'clock in the morning.
But when it came to interpreting Matthew's photograph, Barbara wasn't accurate at all. All he'd had to drink all day was milk and Pepsi.
I don't know what you've been up to today, but you're quite out of balance. Whatever you've taken has actually also clouded your aura very much, and it seems to have almost cut you off from your real feelings.
I don't know what this is there, because I don't drink or smoke. That's a problem. That all I've had is Pepsi and some milk this morning. And I have been a bit stressed because of exams, but I haven't drank anything like that today.
Okay. Were you in the company of people that smoke?
Yeah.
Okay, because very often the smoke that we inhale can actually affect our aura. So where the doctors talk about passive smoking, it actually does show in your aura.
Barbara and Jeff are spiritual healers. Hussein's a photographer trying to bridge the gap. Both are working towards a time when an examination of the aura may tell doctors more about the nature of disease. But for now, it's all still science fiction.
I can talk about breaking down stereotypes there. She's an aerospace engineer and an astronaut who has spent a total of more than a month in space. And she has a gift to tell you about it in a way that makes it come to life.
For most of us, the horizon is the limit of our world. We've become used to air travel, which takes that limit a little further, maybe 3 kilometers up in the sky. But there is another brand of people, some of whom have been glamorized in movies, whose horizons extend way beyond that. They are the explorers of today, astronauts like Marsha Ivins, whose first flight was in 1990, and who to date has logged 764 hours in space. Marsha, how did you get into this job? Did you always want to do it? Did you plan to do it?
Well, planning is one thing, and wanting is the truth. I always wanted to be an astronaut. But a lot of people want to do that, whether you actually get to do that. You know, when I was a kid, astronauts were all men, and they were all military pilots. And at the time in the States, being a military pilot was not an option for a woman. So the other thing they were was engineers. So I went off to school and became an engineer. And the year I graduated from college, I sent my application to NASA and said, I'm ready. It was 1974 when Marsha was employed as an engineer on NASA's space program. But it took 10 more years and 2 rejected applications before she was chosen out of the thousands of hopefuls to be trained as an astronaut. What does the training entail? Is it like we saw in the movie The Right Stuff? You know, that dreadful pushing. Well, it's not quite like The Right Stuff. I mean, that's Hollywood for you. That's the movies. And they don't stick pins in us and make us put 1 foot in hot water and 1 foot in cold water and, you know, do all that horrible stuff. And but the training is intense. You start doing simulator sessions with your crew for launches and for landing and for on orbit, and the malfunctions that they throw at you and the problems that they throw at you. That training part is true. I mean, they put you in the simulator where nothing goes right, and expect you to sort it out. And that's how you spend a year. In fact, the only time anything goes right usually is in flight.
Marcia finally went up in 1990. It was NASA's first shuttle mission since the Challenger disaster in 1986, and that memory was with them every moment.
0.
The launch is not anywhere near as dramatic as it was in Apollo 13 or as it was in the Right Stuff, you know, and that kind of thing. Those people had a very heavy launch. I mean, that was hard. The space shuttle launch is very civilized, actually. So you're lying there on your back, and as the engines start, you feel a shaking and vibrating in there. And the 3 main engines come up to speed about 6 seconds before the 2 solid rocket motors light, and it shakes and rattles. And when the 2 solid rocket motors light, it's like being kicked in the pants. I mean, you get this kaboom, and you're going somewhere. I mean, and it shakes, and you pull about 2.5 Gs, 2.5 times your weight. So if you imagined yourself lying on your back and 2 people sitting on you, I mean, that's what it's like for the first 2 minutes. And then the solid rocket motors come off, and then it gets very smooth. It's like driving in an electric car. And as you get higher and higher, and there's less and less atmosphere, and you've burned off a lot of your fuel and can go very fast now, the acceleration increases to the last 3.5 minutes, where the acceleration has increased to 3 times your weight. So here you are lying on your back with a gorilla sitting on your chest. It's all going that way, you know. So if I pick my arm up, it comes quickly back to my chest. And, you know, if I turn my head, it's sort of wedged there on the side. And, you know, you have to breathe in short little gasps. And that goes on for about 3 minutes. And then at 8.5 minutes, the main engine's cut off, and like that, you're weightless.
As the flight engineer for the ascent, Marcia sat behind the pilot on the top deck. There were windows in front and above them.
When you go into orbit after you've launched, you're actually upside down. So when you look up, there's the Earth. And so you've spent your life wanting to do this. You know, there were 3 of us who were making our first flight on the flight deck, and the commander was experienced. And so you always look to him to see if that noise bothered him, and then you know to be bothered. And if it didn't, you're okay. And so we're all looking at him, you know, to see if he's happy and we would be happy. And we looked all around, and things are floating, and you know, it suddenly occurs to you that you've done this. And I turned around and I looked out of the window, and here is this blue Earth and an absolutely black sky and this almost violet edge to it where the horizon, where the atmosphere, you know, is. And my crew member next to me was still fidgeting with, you know, where are we and is this all right and here, where's my checklist? And I said, David, look up. And he looked up and just said, oh my.
What does it do to one? Having been there 3 times, do you think it's changed you?
It hasn't changed me in the way people would like me to answer that. I mean, it wasn't a religious experience, and I haven't found some higher, you know, calling or purpose. What it does do though, is it humbles you quite a bit. And it also, I don't know how to describe it, but as you look down, you notice that someone has forgotten to paint the borders and the boundaries there on the countries. And you go around the Earth at 6 miles a second. And so you cross very quietly and very silently the Earth. We are not people of a religion or a country or a belief. You know, we are people of a planet because you see the planet, you know, as you go around it as a whole.
Gravity is something we just take for granted constantly. How does one adjust to being without that?
It's sometimes annoying. I mean, you sometimes wish for just a little bit of gravity so that what you put down would actually stay where you left it. You know, Newton is in control of all of this, and for every force there's an equal and opposite force. And so if I want to go from one place to another, I must push off from where I am. Now, if I just change my mind halfway, there's no stopping halfway. I must hit the wall on the other end and bounce off of that to hit the wall. So you're sort of like a pinball. And so it takes a while to learn just how much force to push off with so that you go exactly where you're going. And then when you do that, you feel very cool. We can have a conversation where I'm on my head and you're on your feet. And it takes a couple days, and you get used to having that conversation with not everybody's eyes all lined up together. You know, you're used to going someplace, you know, you go down a ladder feet first, and if I decide to go down the ladder head first, you know, going from the flight deck to the middeck, I can. And after 3 or 4 days, you finally give up the idea of having to be oriented up all the time, and whichever way you're pointed is up.
And without gravity, liquid forms a ball because the forces in the liquid molecules are stronger than anything else around them. So drinking coffee and eating become, for some, child's play. And Velcro tape is an essential item in daily ablutions to strap you into all the right places. Taking a shower is more like a rub-down because the water doesn't run but bubbles. Neither does toothpaste behave as it should. And of course, even hair needs gravity to hang down. But the daily beauty rituals are the least of one's adjustments in space.
The sun comes up and goes down every 45 minutes as we circle the Earth. So we have 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets a day. And so during the night, little piece of 45 minutes, when you get dark adapted and you can turn all the lights off inside the orbiter and look out the window and your eyes get adapted, there are more stars than you've ever seen because the atmosphere is not in the way to block them. In fact, there's so many stars, sometimes it looks like fog.
On some missions where the crew work in shifts, these boxes provide privacy and darkness. But on Marsh's missions, the crews have always all slept at the same time in one open space.
But how do you sleep? Do you hang it?
Well, you get a sleeping bag and you hang it wherever you like, you know, from the wall or the ceiling or the floor or wherever you want to be, and you crawl in it and you zip it up. And it has 2 holes where your arms come out, and then it has 2 big Velcro straps on it. So if you like the feeling of being tucked in, you make those Velcro straps tight. And what you don't tuck in floats, your arms float, which is fine because blood doesn't go anywhere. I mean, it just sits there. So you never wake up in the morning saying, gee, I slept on that funny, you know, with no feeling in one hand. I mean, that never happens.
What have you personally done on the space flights?
On my first 2 flights, I served as the flight engineer for the ascent and for the entry. I have operated the Canadian arm on 3 flights.
What's that?
The Canadians have built a manipulator, a robot arm, that's outside in the payload bay, in this big cargo bay, and it's operated from inside. And so from inside, I can control this arm to reach over and pick up things and put them away. And that's how, for example, the Hubble telescope was deployed. When they go to do the Hubble telescope repair, somebody operating that arm picks the telescope out of the space and puts it back in the payload bay, and they operate on it, and then they put it back.
Marsh's next mission is in December. It's a space rendezvous. They will dock with the Russian space station Mir. In this 9-day mission, NASA will take up an astronaut to relieve one of Mir's crew, as well as over 3 tons of equipment, experiments, water, and supplies.
Are you looking forward to that? Is it a very special thing to go out and find another space station? All that.
I am looking forward to that. I mean, I'm a big Trekkie, you know, and this is the closest I'll ever come in my life to doing this. Go to another spaceship, you know, actually go into another spaceship. So I'm really looking forward to that part.
Is there a camaraderie, a link between astronauts, no matter whether you are Americans and Russians?
Well, there is. It's sort of on a non-verbal channel, I guess. They don't speak English very well, and I don't speak Russian very well, and so a lot of what we do is, you know, in sign language and joint checklists that are written in English and Russian. And but we are all there for the same reason. We are all there for the same emotional reason, you know, and the politics behind, I mean, the history of the politics and the history of fighting, and it's another one of those borders and boundaries things, you know, all that is left behind.
In today's space adventures, coming back to Earth is a lot more civilized than in the days of Apollo 13.
As you come into the atmosphere, the windows around you, which have been looking at the black of space, start to glow slightly pink, and then they glow slightly, you know, yellowish, and then they finally get into the little orange, and then it goes white. And you sit there sort of silent. I mean, I've done this on the flight deck now 3 times. I've been up there for the entry, and nobody, I mean, the chatter sort of stops, and you sort of sit there. In fact, nobody even reaches up to touch the inside of the window. I've been trying to get somebody to do that, to say, is it hot? I mean, can you feel it? But it's burning in excess of 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit outside. And gradually, after this, gravity starts to pick up very slowly. And at this point, you feel your head starts to get heavy because your neck hasn't had to do any work now for however long you've been there. And your neck starts to get heavy, and it starts to droop down, and you push your head back, you know, and it starts to droop. And your hands, if you pick your hand up, it's very heavy. Someone has clearly added more gravity to the planet since you've been gone. But that's it. I mean, as you come through the speed of sound, the vehicle vibrates a little bit. And after you come out of the speed of sound, then the pilot starts to fly. The computer's been flying all along. And then it touches down and it lands, and now you feel horrible. I mean, that's, you know, there's nothing romantic about it at all.
You feel physically horrible?
I feel physically horrible, yeah. Gravity is heavy, and you have to get used to that again, and standing up is a chore, and the world is spinning around. And then it's over, and you realize it's over. And you're at the back of the line. And after they've finally gotten you out and you've gone and had your shower and met your family and you know, are on your way home to Houston, you know, it's a really strange thing to think, 8 hours ago I was looking down on the planet, you know, drinking my coffee from a little silver bag. And here I am back at home having to worry again about the bills and the car and you know, all the things that you worry about. That's a very bizarre feeling. I mean, you sort of get homesick for space.
Fascinating insight.
Yeah.
What is she doing here?